contest chalk and cheese.
Yeah.
The reason for the title is not all contests are the same.
You say that?
To the casual observer, is everyone all right?
Yeah, fine. Go on.
Yeah.
Okay, to the casual observer, most contests are pretty much superficially the same. And the purpose of the talk really is to demonstrate this isn't really the case at all. And certainly differing rules will require different strategies and tactics depending on the contest. So what I'll talk about mainly is with regard to multi-band HF contests, really just done by a single operator. So not very fancy. And basically showing what the choices are for the operator to make during the event. So basically what you need to be thinking about in order to make the decisions on band, etc., as you go through the contest. So I mean, hopefully this doesn't just have to apply to contesting. You know, this should take away some stuff for award chasing, working special events, and also even just drag queuing. So one thing that is pretty similar with various contests, the QSO content is pretty much the same regardless of what contest you're in. Basically, all you do is exchanging your RST 5 and 9 all the time, or 599 if it's digital or CW, and some basic information between two parties at any one time. So, for example, looking at the CQ Worldwide DX SSB contest, we've been robbed or anything. So here, using this as an example, so this is a basic example QSO. So the first station, the CQ calling station, CQ contest G50, which is the contest group call sign. I'd probably say that a few times. And then somebody comes back to them, in this case, a Hungarian station, and he says, Hotel Alpha 6 Kilo Foxtrot. Simple enough. And essentially all the information that's going to be exchanged is just the CQ zones. So really simple in this case. So G50 comes back to the Hungarian saying HA6KF 5914. That's it. So the 14 is the CQ zone, which covers pretty much Western Europe. So the Hungarian one comes back to that and just says 5915. Because he's in zone 15, which is Central Eastern Europe. And G50 just thanks QRZ G50, and that goes over and over again. In fact, if a good contester, that would happen about 6 times a minute. And here's an example of this is from WinTest, sort of with the second most popular log, but you can see like in the first line that says QSO number 9, 1955, so 1955. Band 20 meters, there's your time and UTC, the call sign of the person that's been worked, and then you see 599, it's a CW contest, and 25 is the zone, and your points allocated. And so basically there's 3 points for that one. That's an overseas one, given the rules. From Japan, I think this guy was in the States. So that's pretty easy, really. In fact, contesting is probably the easiest operating you can do. I mean, other contest exchanges could be serial numbers, QSO number, like you'd give 1955 in that case. CQ zone, like here. Prefixes, which I'll talk about in one of the contests, which is later on, power levels, and also US states or Canadian provinces.
I've heard somewhere you have to give your age.
Yeah, the Japanese ones sometimes do that. Ooh. There we go.
The all-ager contest is that one?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and if you don't want to give it, just give 99. Right. Okay. With just some of the contest rules, a lot of the decisions are already made for you. So, for example, this again looking at the CQ Worldwide DX contest, CW and sideband. That gives you the start and end times pretty much in Greenwich Mean Time, UTC. There's your basic objectives of it, and who can work who essentially. And there are your bands for this one. So pretty much all of the standard contest bands, top band to 10 meters, but you'll never see for a contest anyway, the WARC bands being used or 60 meters. If it is, there's a mistake somewhere. And there's your contest exchange like I did before, 5.9. And the example there's the, I think the East Coast of the US 0.5 and we're 1.4. Also in the rules, you get your power limits. Usually low is considered under 100 watts. Operator categories. And tell you how to submit the logs, etc. Yeah, there's a few other things. I won't go in those things because they're sort of pretty much decided for you before the contest. Okay. So this is where you can make decisions, and this is where you look at the rules on scoring, which is both points and, if they apply, multipliers. So firstly, QSO points, number of points for each QSO that you get, and they can vary. They can vary within in a particular contest. You may get different types of QSOs will give you more points or less. So a CQ Worldwide, 3 points for a DX station, 1 point for your own continent, and for your own DXEC, like we're in England, if we work in the English station, we won't get anything, but we can get a multiplier for that. Looking at multipliers, so essentially, cut a long story short, the total number of multiplier stations that you work times the total number of points will give you a bottom line score. So you might get multipliers, just one multiplier, say you work for DXCC, particular DXCC on a particular band. So for example, in this contest, the CQ Worldwide, say you work Scotland on 14 megahertz, the first time that you do it, you'll get a multiplier for that. That will be recorded on your logging software. I mean, just on multipliers, it's a kind of weird concept. I mean, you do have bonus points in sports like cricket. Obviously, you get a 6 at the boundary, you get a 4 or a 6. Basketball, you get a 3-pointer shot if it's outside this particular distance from the hoop, etc. But the multiplier, I think, is pretty unique to radio sport. I don't know why I call contesting radio sport. You're sitting on your ass drinking copious amounts of coffee. It's not really excessive physicality. Yeah, so the ideal combination of points, and multipliers will depend on the contest rules and also the size of your station. You need a proper balance. So contesting, it's a dismal science. Now that's usually a term given to economics, science of scarcity by, you know who that guy is? Thomas Carlyle. But he called economics a dismal science because you hear it being spoken of, there's only so much to go around, no solutions, only trade-offs. And if you look at contesting that way, it's a similar sort of thing. So you can only do so much activity, you only get so many points, get so many multipliers, and with the equipment you have and the time that you have. So you're quite restricted in that regard. Another economics concept that you can use is what's called opportunity cost. And I think this is quite a useful concept. So it's basically the cost of choosing one course of action over another. So, for example, if you're on the 20-meter band, for example, you can't work stuff on the 40-meter band. If you're just a single station, single radio, etc. So it means you could be missing out on stuff on 40 meters if you do that. Similarly, looking at the way if you're looking at a beam antenna, if it's pointing east towards Europe, you can't work the States that well, for instance. It's just to the west. So even though that may seem obvious, I think it's worth keeping that in your mind when you are on the air. Now, the opportunity cost can be very high in short duration contests. So if you make a misjudgment on being on a particular band at a particular time, you don't have much time to make that up. Since it's a 24-hour contest, there's no tomorrow, essentially. And certainly around solar maximum, which is around now, you may have as many as 5 of those bands open at any one particular time. Some of them may only be a couple. So you've got to make the right choices. I hope this doesn't sound like a corporate away day or something like that, but one of the things that I do find useful is what's called the Eisenhower decision matrix. Eisenhower was a big shot Allied general in World War II, I think president of the US in the 50s. But he had a thing called the decision matrix, which could be applied to contest operation. And essentially what, the top line is that there's basically, you say, what is important and urgent, which I need to do straight away, and what is important but not urgent, what is urgent, etc. And so it's got this four square thing. So not important stuff, for instance, in his case, can just be thrown away, deleted, forgotten about. And obviously not important as urgent, you get some flunky to do it, etc., etc. But something you might want to use with contesting is a matrix a bit like this. So instead of importance, though, it would be whether it's in terms of the yield, in terms of your final score, what's it going to give you in terms of your bottom line total of points. And so, for instance, these are all examples. So multiplier stations on a band that's about to close. Or that could be a sporadic key opening to somewhere, and that's not going to last. So you want to just get those mults first, get them in the log, and then move on to something else. It could also be if there's an opportunity for a very high point QSO run, there's a whole lot of 6-pointers available, something like that, stations which are available now, go get them. So that might be seen as low yield because you're not getting multipliers, but you are getting points, but that opportunity is now. That may not. So something like why something could be urgent, could be strange propagation conditions which seem unusual for that time of day, perhaps, or that time of year, part of the sunspot cycle. Or it could be that a band is, it's late in the afternoon and a certain band is about to close and there's going to be no tomorrow for the contest. You've got to get them now or never. Shows some examples there. Just some of the others, like non-urgent high yield could be, there are multiplier stations, say on 10 meters in the morning towards Russia or something like that. but they're going to be there for much of the day. So you don't have, they're not showstoppers. You'll work them at some point. And similarly, a low yield non-edge, it could be non-multiplier stations on a band that's just opened.
Can I just ask a quick question? Might sound stupid, but how do you know which is a multiplier and which isn't?
And also which pay you.
Well, that's up to judgment. The multiplier, I'll come onto those with the band maps.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the cheap way of doing it anyway. But this is sort of answering your question. The thing is, what you need to do in terms of knowing whether something is unusual is knowing what to expect on the bands, not propagation effectively. So you want to know what's normal, what's unusual, what's unlikely to be repeated during your contest. So, for example, if it's a daytime contest from here to Germany on 20 meters, pretty normal, pretty run of the mill. But if it's on 28 megs, and you hear a German station, you may want to go on 10 meters and work them, because that may not be open for that long. Could be sporadic, most likely. So in that case, you drop everything to work them. And also, I mean, this is without, maybe may just be points, may not be miles. But for example, if for Dutch stations on 40 meters, generally that's a daytime thing. If you're coming towards dusk, get them in the log before they disappear.
That's when you're on short to skip a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pretty much PA now, all through the day into the early evening will be all right. But in winter, and particularly if the sunspot cycle's down, you want them done by the mid-afternoon, the latest. So it's thinking about all these sorts of things. And this is something particularly for, I think, for QRP operators, and talking about the X6100 and all that stuff, that is 705, etc. Know when there are certain sweet spots on the band. For instance, you may hear someone from Estonia on 7 megs in the afternoon, quite loud, but probably won't be able to work them. Maybe a very big station, but you're a weak station, and there's a couple of skip bounces and a lot of absorption. But the thing is, if you get where you want to go, just on the edge of the skip zone, which corresponds to the maximum usable frequency, that's where a lot of the radiated energy will go. You notice the blue circle, you see a lot of those rays, which sort of basically radiated energy really, are sort of bunched up a bit around that point. So if you're on 5 watts SSB to that point, you should be able to get through. But any further on, you might have a bit of trouble. So you've got to be aware of those things. You can use propagation prediction programs. That's, I think, in order to sort of set your general strategy. I much prefer to use things like INOSON data as real-time data, because a prediction is just that, prediction. But they are useful to know the difference between what's normal and what's abnormal. But nothing really beats first-hand experience. And after a while, you'll just get the feel for the bands, instinctively know when certain bands are open, when bands are likely to soon close, etc., and when to go for them. It's just you just develop those instincts over time, and even just listening. You don't have to necessarily talk to find those things out. And actually, one of the things you can do, contesting with a lot of people on the air at any one time, it's a way of sort of getting the feel of the bands. As much as contesting is derided, it does have its useful points. Okay, so a choice that you're making, one of the choices is whether to search and whether to run or search and pounce. So these are the two types of contest operating. Running being you're basically finding a clear frequency, hopefully, and you call CQ, like with what G5O was doing in that early example, and just keep calling and calling and calling, and one QSO after the next. Searching and pouncing, the fancy names really. Searching and pouncing really is just replying to CQ calling stations. So you search for them. Certainly in the old days, you could search for them just by spinning the BFO and hear a station that you want to work. When they finish calling, you pounce on them, you respond to them with your own, just calling your own call sign once. So yeah, you can spin the VFO like that, or the 21st century way is to use a band map, which is, I showed you an example of WinTest before. WinTest is something, this is from N1MM logger, but what it does is show you you get these spots. People either purposely spot more there, certainly with single sideband, people will go on the internet, say, I've spotted this station, enter it on this frequency. It'll go through the telnet, through the internet, and come onto this your screen here. I think it's a bit cheeky in a way, but it's accepted. But it means that you can find out instantly what's on your band, and certainly if they're color coded like red, means that they contain a multiplier. So
Does that stay on for a period of time and then disappear?
yeah, you can set that. You put that all in your settings. So you can. I think some of them can last up to 60 minutes, but that's probably too long.
Yeah.
And some bands which come and go, you may want to set that to as low as 10 minutes.
Is that what we were doing at the farm? When I
Yeah.
came up?
Yeah,
It was, wasn't it?
yeah. So you were
I
sort
was
of.
picking out from that list.
That's right.
And then pouncing on it.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you just click on it, and the cat control on the radio, the computer will tell the radio to flip the VFO to that frequency, and off you go. You should hear them.
So can I just clarify that? If it's in red, then you actually work the station, you go to work the station with that.
Well, you can't. Well, that will give you a multiplier if you do end up working it.
So you do the multipliers first.
You generally would. I think, again, coming back to that decision matrix, if you say this was late in the afternoon, early evening, and you see some Dutch stations there or some English ones, even though they're not multipliers, you may want to work those first, get those in the log, and then maybe go back to the multipliers. And so that's listening. The thing is not to make the mistake of just going to the multiplier, see something in red, click on that. And you've got to sort of make a decision. Just on that as well, if you QRP, you want to be a bit more judicious. You want to know what's in the sweet spot and what isn't. So, for example, Italy, maybe sort of northern Italy, may be in the sweet spot. So that IR2 station, you might want to work that. You might want to figure out the KC1, which is America, and all these things. You can try and click on them, but you might be wasting your time.
Isn't there a timeout on the listing for the stations?
Yeah, you can adjust
You
that.
could adjust the timeout, can't you?
Yeah,
I think max was about 60.
that's right. 60 minutes.
Like that.
60 minutes.
60 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, if you see a really
A bit
rare,
long, the back, it was like a gone by.
well, that's the thing. The problem is you risk if a station that you really want has been spotted quite some time ago, say 30 minutes ago. It may not be spotted since, but it's still there. So you'll still want to see it. And but I think
It's in 60 minutes, you've got another station on that frequency.
quite likely, and that's something you should check. Is that just because you click on that, don't think that it's the station that it says it is. Make sure you listen to them calling CQ, and also people make mistakes when they enter them. So even with the automated ones, especially with the automated ones for CW and digital. The other thing that just a rule of thumb with regards to running or doing search and pounce, basically the more powerful station you have, the more potent it is. So you got an linear and some maybe a beam antenna or something. You know, the more running that you'll do relative to search and pounce than a lower power station effectively. And part of the reason, the main reason for that is you will be louder if you've got a potent station than everyone else, and you'll stand out. So people spinning the BFO, for instance, will land on this, on you, who's really, really loud. Think, oh, this guy will work me, no problem. So people do that. If they're faint, even though they could be, say, a 5-watt station, people tend to ignore them.
Yeah.
Unless they do say stroke QRP or something, which is something people should do if they are QRP operators. So, and also look at the band scope as well. You know, the brighter blips will attract your attention more than the faint ones. So, it's a little psychological, really. Oh, come on, is this happening? Oh, there we go. Right. Yeah, and sometimes, certainly for sideband, not so much for CW and digital. Digital can, and so CW can very narrow signals. You have to be unlucky to go right on top of someone else. But with sideband, you've got that sort of 2 kilohertz of bandwidth you need, and you've got everyone sort of all over the top of each other. I mean, I have a rule when I'm up in with the contest group. Once the needle drops below S9, when I'm spinning through the VFO, I call. That's a clear frequency for me.
Yes.
So you got to be a little bit down and dirty sometimes.
Especially on a small band like 40 metre.
Exactly right. And one of the discussions that we have on the contest group is about 40 on certainly on the SSB contents. So if you can, we do put the 4 square, you know, up, which takes a lot of effort, but it does mean you get a focused beam on where you want to go. The gain will just punch through that cure ring.
Because when you put 40 metres on, it's well wide at night.
Ah,
You can't get a pin between.
that's exactly right. Yeah, and 20 meters during the day, it's the same thing.
Same thing.
Not as bad.
Well, 10 metres last year as well. Because obviously it's open now.
Yeah, that's right.
Spot.
Yeah, yeah.
10 metres was mega.
I guess the one advantage of 10 meters is that you don't, certainly if you're working to the west, at some point that the continental Europeans will drop out. So you'll get a gap that you can operate. They can't do anything except for, you know, it's these things to consider as well. Certainly if you're a lower power station. Okay. And with S&P as well, if the station hears you, they'll work you. And it's just sometimes they just can't hear you. But often the case, people, when you're calling, when you're running, and you're a faint station, people just turn over you. It's just the way it is.
This is one thing where it makes a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think.
Yeah, it's standing out. It's being louder than everyone else.
If you're just working DX during the day, in the week, or whatever, on non-contest days,
Yeah,
you get away with all power.
that's right. And you're often split as well.
Yeah.
In contests, you shouldn't be using split.
Because like you say, they're gonna answer the louder station
Yeah,
It's
every
nature,
time.
it's nature to answer the loudest state,
Yeah.
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
I mean, when we
absolutely.
setups, you know, ourselves, I found it's easy. If you've got a pile, it's easy to pick the loud station there.
Yeah,
You get
exactly right. And you also think that the path is better to you because they are loud, aren't they?
Yeah.
So if you add that all up, and yeah, that's right. Just on QRP operation, I mean, as hard as it can be and frustrating as it can be, it is sometimes worth to try it. And particularly, so I'll talk about this in the motor contest, if you're in a rare area, you know, like a rare island or something like that, people go out of their way to work you, as weak as you may be.
Yeah.
Certainly, it's amazing, but Wales is quite rare. So if you're
Yes, it
operating
is,
an
absolutely,
MW,
yeah.
you just go across from Chester.
I
And you'll
mean,
get-
I found, outside contesting up top, when you put a CQ call out, and you say QRP,
Yeah,
I've had more replies than when I put out a call CQ on 300 watt. They pick him out.
that's right. And so that's an advantage on CW because that people pick that out in the RBN. And I think out of probably people feel sorry for them, I guess.
Well,
But and also a portable station, they'll see that suffix.
I mean, there's a guy in America I speak to very often, and he will stop calling and just say QRP only.
Yeah.
And he'll do that for 10 minutes.
That's good.
And then he'll say M3s, M6s, M7s in the UK only.
Does anyone obey it?
Apart from a few Italians, yes, most people do.
Yeah.
But then he'll go, and the intermediate license holders in the UK, the 2E0s, only.
Yeah.
It gives everybody a chance. He's a really nice guy,
Wow.
but he loses his rag. If he said an M6, M7 only, and he gets some clown from Italy with a kilowatt calling, he should
You'll have to go.
That sounds,
Power to
Yeah,
them.
that's good.
you know.
that sounds a bit like the guy over in, was it in Holland that used to be with them, but, Christine. Was it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, he
In
used
Norway,
to, he used to tell him to go away.
Oh, he does this phone.
Yeah.
Really good.
He used to give us a right jip.
Most people give in, I think, at the end and say, "Oh, yeah, all right, fuck you."
It's a case
Yeah,
of,
they just encourages them to come to do it.
yeah, but he used to say, I said,
LA0HK.
yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, add if there's a place that you really want to work, say like Germany, for instance, in WPX, which I'll come to in a minute. If that's in the sweet spot, give it a go. You know, if you're low power, you'll be loud.
Afterwards, it's the slowness of nature.
Slowness.
Yeah.
There we go. Now, the other rule of thumb that you get is that if you want to work a large number of multiplier stations, or all the ones you're going to work, you do that by searching and pouncing. You know, you see them highlighted on a band map, or if you're just spinning the VFR and run into them, then you work them.
Yeah.
I think that's certainly true for low power stations again, mostly. But and one of the problems is some of these multipliers, again, depending on the contest, may have a lot of stations piling up on them. You know, and on 10 meters, you may not know they're there because they're in this.
I must admit, when I enter a contest, I always do search and pounce because I can't call. When I call CQ, you
Yeah.
start coming back to me at a rate of knots.
Yeah, you've got to show them who's boss though, and I
Yeah,
think
but
that's.
yeah.
I had to go for a lie down in the dark room.
Yeah, sometimes if the pilot gets unruly, you're calling CQ and their stations are calling twice, and they're just calling out again and again and again.
Yeah.
Just do a few CQs in a row. Just get everyone back in order. And the problem is what I think a lot of searchers and pouncers they're a bit like dogs. They see indecision and fear, and they'll take things into their own hands. And just keep calling the call sign over and over again in 5 times in a row or something. And you don't want to have that indiscipline. But it's up to you. I mean, I think for a nervous person, people detect the nerves. But you just got to just tell everyone to shut up, basically. I've done that a couple of times.
Yeah.
Literally saying, everyone, quiet.
One thing you don't need to call is Italians only.
No. Goes with that saying, isn't it?
You guarantee you put CQ call out, you'll get at least 3 to 5 straight away.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. Straight. In seconds.
I did it on Sunday.
You'll get.
What kind of room?
Or put basically 800 to 1,000 watts through the linear, but we've got long lines, so presumably within the limit. I guess we've got 1,000 now anyway. 1,000, 1,500?
1,000 now. That's at the aerial. That's at
I'm
the
assuming
antenna.
so.
Says
Assuming
at the
you-
That's at the antenna. If you read the spurb, it's at the antenna.
Yeah, it used to be the old rules.
So really, you probably go over the 1,000.
Yeah.
50
If
metres.
you, especially a station like G50.
Yeah,
Could probably go over 1,000 because of the length of cables you'd be.
yeah,
You've
yeah,
got to take that into account, haven't you?
yeah.
I mean, you could have.
Must be.
And how long are those cables?
Could have six-
Well, they're long, but they're,
Someone
Too
in
bad
the,
for
someone
me.
in the 100 metres.
There's
The
probably some
the
losses
longest,
there.
the longest one is the longest one.
Oh, yeah,
Maybe.
you don't, when you run it,
Well, you
the
could
long ones used to run,
Uh,
they could be up to about 50, 60 and 100 metres virtually.
1,200.
When you take into consideration, they're going to the switch box at the bottom, then they've got to go up the mast as well. You know,
Well,
80,
yeah.
80 foot up the mast.
So 1,200, you might be about 900 watts.
Yeah.
The area is right.
You got
But then you've got the application of the antenna.
What's the mass? 100 metres of cable.
Yeah.
but yeah, don't really know the exact losses, do we?
No, we've never measured them.
Do you use beams on that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
they're all beams.
Because you were turning one last time when I was operating, didn't you?
We have a quad up as well, a
Yeah.
quad up for 40 metres.
Not a little guy out there winding an
No.
hour.
No,
Yeah,
it was
right.
Evan on the hook.
When it works.
Sorry.
No, the,
I think
the
you're
quad,
right.
you know, the
Yeah.
Delta.
Oh, that thing. Oh, that's not much.
Tom will tell you how long the cables. I was walking on the field off
Yeah,
the back.
Yeah.
The one up.
How long
Please to know.
About 100
Is
meters.
Tom saying that?
The one up to the Worcester. about
100
100
meters.
Meters, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of cable, isn't it?
It is.
A lot of cable.
It is.
But we used our RG213, best quality RG213 to get off the field. We actually
Yeah.
better, but in actual fact, it's very erratic. In fact, bad connections, easy to damage. It's really more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's on the, what's it, on the speakers.
Yeah.
They were set.
It's pretty good. And there's Heliax in that as well, isn't there?
Well, we use Heliax on the Buxton map. I don't think there's much difference, to be quite honest, Nancy, because when we use Heliax in the past,
It's not on them.
ages on looking for faults.
Just on the,
Right.
on the set side.
Yeah. Be interesting to sort of find out exactly. But I mean, if you're on MF bands,
Yeah.
particularly, the loss isn't going to be that much. I would have thought anyway.
Well, you can actually theoretically work it out because they usually part the cable. If you look up a particular cable, it's too much. You can work the depth of the loss.
What day are you at the WPX now?
But left, you did left is actually so you can clever work out what your loss is. The other way to do it
Change the blue things
power
off, right?
at the top. They put a power meter at the top of the
Hey,
bar.
well,
Actually, they go up and
31st.
On the Saturday or something.
What guys? Yeah, we'll have to look at that, Tom.
well, I always say the easy way to do it is put a power meter at the top. We can get Dave to climb off the mast and read the meter.
That's all you should need, shouldn't
It'll
it?
be on
Yeah.
high sense.
Yeah, but cable is what it is. You can't do much about it.
Just speakers on high sense.
That's right.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Just if you are. Oh.
The other one should go up as well.
Okay. We all set.
Yeah, go on.
Okay. If you are running, I mean, you're going to run into multipliers. You'll bump into them. How many that you will get will depend on your own station's rarity as a potential multiplier, and also your power as well. How well you'll be heard. So looking at CQ Worldwide SSB again, essentially the multipliers are countries on each band, DXCC entities to be exact, and you'll find certainly at the start of the contest you'll start working a lot of mults. The first time you work a country, you get a mult, and so for instance, you may the question is whether you sort of abandon a run for a mult that you see, say, on the band map. And just for example, say you bump into a Polish station and they're to a penny, particularly on 20 meters, they're a band like that. So if you see those on your band map, for instance, don't bother, just keep your run going, because you'll work them anyway. And so if you're looking at that in terms of opportunity cost, the opportunity cost of continuing that run in this case is low. You just keep going. But say you've got if you see an Isle of Man station on the band map, particularly on the higher bands, and you see that it's being received in the UK at this point in time, you may want to consider breaking off and working it, because for a start, not many stations on the Isle of Man for a start, and then the conditions may be rare, so you've got a double thing to consider there. And in that case, the opportunity cost of continuing that run would be high. So you want to actually go and do the Isle of Man, then come back onto the running. But you get a better picture of that in the IOTA contest. Okay, so IOTA, standing for Islands in the Air. Basically, it's the contest, annual one, 24 hours, held at the last full weekend of July, and you get stations like this. I think this is a station in Nova Scotia, quite a fancy one, in the picture there. And for single operators, which I'm only dealing with here, you do have a mode choice. You can do SSB only, or CW only, or a combination of both. And even though it's a 24-hour contest from midday to midday, Saturday, Sunday, UTC, there's a 12-hour option for single operators. So that's quite a time constraint. You think 12 hours is all the time in the world? It's not. So looking, if you're a station on the mainland Britain, which is under IOTA reference 005, EU 005, the stations, the points that you get, if you work stations on other island groups, 15 points. Stations on EU 005, which I think is a bit naff, 5 points. And other stations, so-called world stations. So these won't be on, they won't be on IOTA recognised islands. Say again, like Germany or something, mainland Germany, 5 points. What's interesting about this is this contest is the multipliers, and instead of your standard DXCCs, your country entities, the multipliers are IOTA recognised island groups, so they have their own reference each of them. Worked per band or per band mode combo if you're doing both CW and SSB. There are quite a number of active island groups. Not all the islands across the world are activated, but you're getting onto about 70 during the EU, in the EU, average event. That may seem a lot, but when you look at it, it's not that simple. One of the problems that you will have is that many of these islands will just have a single station on them, and they won't necessarily be very powerful. So, well, here's an example of a powerful one. This is when the contest group went to Arranmore, a couple of years ago before the pandemic. We're only probably, I think there's only one other station in that EU reference, EU121, Irish Coastal. So when we called, everyone wanted to work us pretty much. So the other thing to remember is you won't run into mults so much, because if there's only one station on an island, for instance, they're going to be running all the time. Your opportunity when you're running to work them is substantially less than it would otherwise be in another contest, for instance. So you do have to, even a powerful station will have to have a search and pounce. You'll break off runs, for instance, to work stations and then come back. Yeah, and so EJ6 kPh station, even though running over a kilowatt across the bands, 2/3 of the mults that we work were search and pounce. So obviously, if you're a smaller station, that number would probably be higher. And just to reiterate, a lot of stations like the one that Tom would recognise, this one from Ireland. This wasn't for the IOTA contest, but a lot of the people who go to these islands for that contest will have a very simple, maybe a vertical dipole array set up in a little tent, 100 watts, and not be very loud. And the other thing also to remember, I don't mean to slag them off, but a lot of these people who do those island trips can't handle the pileups that they get, and they're all flustered, and they struggle to get through the traffic. So you may be waiting a long time to get your turn when you search and pounce. Something that's different, totally different, and hence the chalk and cheese title. Something different, way different from IOTA is CQ Worldwide WPX or CQWPX. And the idea here is to work as many call sign prefixes as possible, wherever they are in the world. Just basic information, the SSB one is on the, oh, that's wrong. That should be, is that right? No, that's the, it should be the end of May. Sorry, that's the, for the CQ Worldwide DX. That's the next one that we're doing. That's the end of March.
It's the end of March, isn't it?
Yeah, but WPX is the end of May. So I got that wrong. Well, hang on, wait. Sorry, no.
WPX is end of March.
Yes, it is. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, don't listen to me. Yeah, I am actually right there. But yeah, the CW one for WPX is the end of May. So that's the, and then the RTTY one is September, RTTY radio teletype digital effectively. They all have roughly the same rules. The points, so for if you use the lower HF bands, the MF bands effectively, so 7 megs or below, and if you get contacts outside Europe, you'll get bonus points. So if you contact non-G EU stations, so assuming we're in England, on 14 megs and up, you just get 1 point. If you're on 7 megs or below, you get 2 points. So it's a bit of an incentive to use the lower bands. I think because they're a bit harder to get further distance with. Yep, so, but if you go outside of Europe, if you contact, I mean, that could be someone in Cyprus, for instance, which is considered part of Asia, 2 points on HF and 6 points for MF. So it's well worth considering that. And G stations get the 1 point for all bands. Rubbish, isn't it? But the really interesting thing is the multipliers. And essentially that's the number of separate prefixes as defined by the CQ rules and that you work, but it's overall, it's not work per band. So prefix as per the WPX rules will be the letter stroke number combination which forms the first part of the call sign. And the first part meaning the entity prefix, which is your country prefix, and a subsequent number. And this can be a bit confusing. So for an example, here's a Lithuanian station that's made up LY1000BK. Now, you think the prefix normally would be LY, and that's what if you look up a prefix table, that's what it would be. But in terms of what WPX wants for a mult is the LY1000, so where the number ends. So there you go, what I said. The thing is, it's a bit tricky when you've got call signs which are a bit like Bosnia, for instance, which is the official prefix is E7, and also Slovenia is a similar thing. But E74DX, the actual prefix of WPX will be E74, not E7. So you get the multiplier for E74. And if you know, if you work Bosnia a few times with E77, 73, 70, blah, 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 you can get a number of multipliers from that entity. Slovenia is probably the more popular one than Bosnia. So that's S5 for the official prefix, but it could be S57DX, S57 being the WPX prefix. What that means is that you're going to have hundreds of potential multiplier stations just in Europe alone. And I did a quick calculation. In the WPX CW, it's the same thing. A few years ago, we made 3,700 QSOs, more than 1,100 being multipliers. So sort of 1 in 3 ratio, essentially. Come on. Ooh, yeah. So if you're a big station like G5, you could just simply run constantly and you'll run into multipliers. There's just so many of them. And none of them stand out as, I mean, maybe that LY 1000 might stand out as something special, but it's not like a rare island on in IOTA, for instance. So if you hear LY 1000 BK and you've got a pile up on it, just forget about it, just move on, you know. Yeah, again, looking at in terms of opportunity cost, it's low if you just stick to running and just ignore that one. If you can't get it, don't worry about it too much. And I think the contrast is with IOTA, there are very few multipliers that you can actually work. So when you hear a multiplier on there, you think, oh yeah, I should probably work it. It may not be able to be available again. Whereas WPX, doesn't matter where they are in the world, the mult's the same. So, and you'll sometimes hear these sorts of contests being referred to as just a rate contest. It really is the number of QSOs that you can work per hour over that 48-hour period, and you just run into the multipliers. It's almost like you don't have a multiplier thing in there, it's just points. So it's chalk and cheese compared to IOTA, different sort of mindset that you go into it with. Just quickly on the bit more on the WPX. So essentially what it means is that for smaller stations, there are tons of opportunities. I mean, it won't do as well as a big station, but certainly where we are at the edge of Europe, this is a continent with plenty of multipliers, plenty of countries, plenty of different prefixes, and you just don't need much power or fancy antennas to get a decent rack up, decent score. So, I mean, running may be difficult on SSB. I think particularly on 40 meters and that, just getting a clear channel more than anything's not easy, and that's just the way it is. But you can use the band map like here and just go click, 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 click on the ones that you want to work. If you're a low power station, click on the ones that seem reasonable. If you click on Alaska or something like that, that expects to work it. See, if on the CQ Worldwide DX, that you probably would try and get Alaska because you get the extra multiplier for the country and also the zone. But with WPX, doesn't matter where the prefix is. So unlike many island groups in the IOTA, you shouldn't expect that many pileups. If you want to do search and power, you shouldn't expect many pileups on the multiplier that do exist because there are so many of them. Just looking at some of the multipliers you can work. So this is going back to G50 in 2019. You know, some of the QSOs and the number of multipliers. Just look at Germany, for instance. So you could actually go on, you could just work Germany almost and get a good score. 14 megs during the day. Lots and lots of, just look at the multipliers there, nearly 90, just for that little geographic entity. And that could be in the sweet spot for the 14 megs during the day, 7 megs at night, 3.5 late at night, and just keep clocking up just going down the band map and clicking the red multiplier stations, or just spinning the VFO for that matter. So this is the thing, CQ Worldwide DX, you're swinging for the fences. You really want to set yourself up to go long distance to get all those Asian sort of zones and countries and that in the log. Here it doesn't really matter that much. yeah, the same with Germany. And oh, come on, that's it.